Have you ever seen those complicated and intricate polymer clay canes and thought, I'd really like to try that, but I don't feel like I can accomplish it? Well, I'd like to give you some really good tips for starting at the beginning, making some basic simple canes, practicing some good technique to combine those simple canes together to make a complex cane. First, we're going to start with the bullseye, probably the simplest cane to make. I'm going to start with just a rod of solid color in the middle. I've chosen gold, and I have a sheet of brown clay that I've already pressed through the pasta machine on its thickest setting. I'm going to layer my gold rod on the very edge and just roll the chocolate clay up around it. I'm going to mark it right here by rolling brown into brown. When I back off, there's a nice little line there. That's a guideline for me to trim against. Now I've got a really sharp blade, and this is super important for working with canes. You'll need some sharp blades. I'm going to cut just inside the line. The reason is because polymer clay tends to stretch, and you can easily fill up that gap by using some finger pressure, but it's really hard to deal with if you overlap. Now at this point, I'm ready to reduce the cane. Reducing means I'm going to make the cane longer and longer, but maintain the gold rod on the inside. I'm not going to mix the colors. Good technique for reducing is to start by putting more pressure in the middle, and then I'm pushing any air bubbles out toward the ends. Air bubbles are an enemy when making polymer clay canes, so you always want to practice good technique to work the bubbles always toward the outside. Now you can see that this clay is really starting to move, and at that point, because this is a round cane, I can use my work surface to really start rolling it down. Now, I've chosen golden brown because I want to make an animal pattern, and what's important for an animal pattern is to have some inconsistencies because it's more natural. I'm going to take my sharp blade again. I've rolled this end down fairly small and left this end large. I'm going to section the cane into 4 equal lengths. Now see how I'm rocking this back and forth? That's because my cane is very warm. I'm warm, the lighting in here is warm, and so by rocking it back and forth, I'm making a smooth cut down through the cane without deforming it. Some people like to throw their canes in the refrigerator after they've handled them a lot. That makes them much firmer and easier to slice. Now I'm just going to randomly regroup this cane, and what you've done here is gone from a simple bullseye cane to a complex lace cane. Now what I can do is I can reduce this again, once again pushing the air bubbles out toward the end, rolling it on the work surface, and I can simply regroup it and recut it and group it together again and again until my pattern is as intricate as I'd like it to be. You can see how that works out here on this lovely pendant because I have a variety of shapes and sizes of the pattern, and it looks more natural and beautiful. Another simple cane you can make with Sculpey clays is a leaf cane. To start the leaf cane, I have a rod of bright green clay, and I have a sheet of a darker green that I've run through the pasta machine on the number 4 setting. It's quite thin. What I want to do is take my very sharp blade, and I'm going to cut this rod of clay into some sections. Just score down through the rod, and try really hard to come down perpendicular all the way. Lay this section of the bright green on top of the darker green, and then trim it with a really sharp knife. Pick that piece up, and now it has a green vein sheet on one side, and you'll want to reassemble this just the way you took it apart. You want to continue making lines across your rod until you have several, 3, 4, or 5, however many you want to do. The next step is to take your very sharp blade and cut down through the rod at an angle to the lines you just made. So I'm scoring across the top and then pulling down evenly. Then I want to take one of these sections and line it with some green clay as well. Line that right up on the edge, trim with my sharp blade. Pick that up. Now, the way we cut this apart was like this. But what I want to do when I reassemble it is turn one completely around so that I get the veins going more at angles this way. At this point now I can reduce the cane. Now I don't want to reduce it like I did the bullseye cane by rolling it. I want to reduce it by pinching the top. And you can even use your work surface to pinch down and to pull. And I want to maintain that leaf shape by kind of working at it like a triangle. So I have a skinny top and a heavier bottom. Now here's some samples of ones that I've already reduced. Sometimes when I make a cane like this, I like to reduce to different levels of thickness so that I could use some larger leaves and some smaller leaves. I want to show you how to slice this very thinly so that you could make this type of bead. I just take my very sharp blade, and I always stand my leaf on end so the point is at the top, score across the top, and then pull straight down. Now this takes a little bit of practice, so you want to just practice using good technique and cut straight down. I could even pick this up and shape it a bit with my hands, pinching the edges to make it look more natural and fluid like a real leaf would. If I wanted a thicker bead, I could back off just a bit and cut this, say, 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch thick, and that would make a nice bead for a bracelet. I hope you enjoy making your leaf beads. Another fun and simple cane that you can make with Sculpey clay is the jelly roll. The jelly roll might be simply the most popular cane ever made. What you want to do first is pick 2 colors, at least 2 colors, that are in high contrast to each other so that when you roll them up together, they really look good together and they're visible against each other. Decide which one you want on the bottom. Now these clays have already been pressed through my pasta machine on the thickest setting. When I start a jelly roll cane, I always put the bottom layer out a little further, and that gives me a lip that can bend up around my inside clay and is a good starting place to roll up. Practice your good technique by not letting any air bubbles get trapped in between the sheets, and once you've rolled up far enough that you're in control, you can just roll this up with your fingers. Now, if your bottom sheet sticks out further like that one, just take your sharp blade and cut back through that layer and peel that back. Now you can seal this edge by giving some finger pressure all along the edge, and you can even just bend that outside color over the inside color. Now we're ready to reduce. You can reduce this just the same way you did the bullseye cane, and you can reduce it down as far as you want or leave it as large as you want. What I think is really fun is just to make that first cut off the end to see how neat and tidy it looks inside. Some variations on this cane include wrapping it like a bullseye with another color, or even adding some checkerboard stripes around the outside edge. I hope you enjoy making these canes, and you'll want to experiment with Sculpey 3 and with Primo Sculpey, practice your basic cane technique, and have fun.